I'm David Taub. In this GV Wire special, we talk to two Fresno women who tell the stories of how their families were able to escape Nazism in Eastern Europe in the late 1930s. We hear the stories of Hanna Krebs and Eva Maiden as young girls, how their families were able to get out of Germany and Austria and make it to America.
Hi, I'm Hanna Krebs. I was born in Augsburg, Germany, which is about an hour from Munich, and I was about 15 months old when my story kind of begins with Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass. That was November 9th, 1938. Well, my family were owners with a larger part of my family in Germany of a, you wanted to know the business? Yeah, the family. They owned a woolen men's clothing and woolen manufacturing company. And we were probably, I would say, upper middle class family, lived quite well. On Kristallnacht, the Nazis came into our home, and at that time my parents had a number of few couples visiting, or it was a social event, and the Nazis arrested my father and the other gentlemen, the other men in the home, and took them to Dachau, which was the first concentration camp that was established at that time, and was mostly meant to be a work camp, but it was very severe at the time. And before Kristallnacht, my parents had kind of seen some of the things that were going on, and my father had been to New York to visit some cousins that we had and ask if they would sponsor us if we needed to leave, and generously they did. So we had some papers showing that we would be sponsored, and during that time, and some before 38, the Nazis' plan was to make Germany Judenfrei, which was just to let us go if we had a place to go to leave Germany. That policy obviously changed after Kristallnacht, and things got much worse. But so my father had been to New York, and we had papers to show that we were allowed to leave, or that we were allowed to emigrate to New York. So after my father was taken to Dachau on that fateful night, my mother went to the consulate, stood in line, she said, you know, for the whole day, and showed them the papers that we had, where we'd be sponsored in New York. So they agreed to let us leave, which was very fortunate. But at the time, we didn't have papers to enter New York yet. Everything was being processed. But my grandfather on Kristallnacht and my grandmother were in Baden-Baden, which is a small town in Germany where the Germans love to go for the mineral baths and the salt cures. And at that time, he was arrested there too with a lot of gentlemen, older men, and made to walk down the street. They were taunted, arrested and taunted, and then they were let go. But while he was in Baden-Baden, he met a couple from Manchester, England, who saw what was going on and told them that, told my grandfather that if they needed to leave, that they could come and live with them, which was amazing that perfect strangers would offer something like that, but that did happen occasionally. And so when my grandparents came right back to Augsburg, of course, they went home, and my mother showed the papers to the consulate. They had agreed to let us go, and my grandparents didn't have exit papers. You had to have exit and entrance, didn't have exit papers, but my mother and father and I went to Manchester, England, and we lived with these people for 8 months until our papers arrived, allowing us to emigrate into New York. Well, I was, you know, just 2 at the time, less than 2, so obviously I was taken care of. And people were very, very good to us, and eventually, after 8 months with them, we had received our papers to take I have the ship and the manifest here. I have a lot of papers that we eventually went on the, what is it? It was the SS Georgic to the United States. And I also have a photo, an original photo of my grandfather in Baden-Baden being marched down the street. He was at the head of the line, and they had to, here with the soldiers, and they had to carry a large Mogen David Jewish star at the head of the line. They were taunted, but then they were released, obviously. And then the other thing I have, which is obviously most important, is the postcard that my father was allowed to send to my mother from Dachau. It has the original Dachau stamp here, which is a little loose, from Dachau, that he wrote her that everything was fine and not to worry about him. Obviously, I'm sure any of the cards or letters were carefully inspected. They released my father after a few months. They allowed, because we had papers, to leave. There was a period of time before 38, where, as I said, the Jews, the Nazis would just, if you had a place to go, but it was very difficult to know where to go, that they, would let you go. But after 38, then that stopped. Then they were, they had their other concentration camps, the horrific ones, set up, and that was the solution. As a matter of fact, my husband's family, his father was a dentist, and of course they were from Berlin, and they had their license also, revoked. No one could go to a Jewish doctor. But my father-in-law obviously saw the handwriting on the wall in 33. As soon as Hitler was elected, he said, "We're out of here." So he and my mother-in-law and my husband and his brother went to Israel, because Israel was easier to emigrate to at that time, but the restrictions from most other places were really very tight, and it was hard for Jews to go anywhere. Right, we emigrated and stayed in New York at the time. Well, just lucky to have a sponsorship. Otherwise, we would not have gotten out in 38. They would go through the houses. They would take everything they wanted. They'd move when they arrested Jews and put them in the camps. Some of them would move into the homes, into the Jewish homes. And I know my parents, just before we left, they had all our belongings, all their belongings, furniture and household, put into what they call a lift, which is just a huge box with all the items. And supposedly it was supposed to be shipped to New York at that time, but we never got it. I think there was some excuse that it was burned in the port, and it was probably stolen.
Did you say either you or your parents suffer what we now know as PTSD?
Probably. My mother did, yeah.
Did they ever talk about it?
Not a lot, and interesting that with Eva was more aware of it going up, but I found that our friends a lot of them were refugees, and a lot of the people, as well as my parents, they didn't want to talk about it a lot. They kept it very close to them. That was very common from what I've heard, and I know my experience too. The refugees didn't want to talk about it a lot. And they also, when they came here, they really wanted to be Americans. So it wasn't something they concentrated on, even though it was, something they felt, but it wasn't overt. Well, I think the bottom line is never again, yes, which we always hear. But as Eva said, I think it's something we have to be aware of with all the freedoms that we have in America, in a democratic country with a constitution, that sometimes these, things can be eroded very fast, much faster than we think. And this is something that I know Eva and I both are concerned about today. But even before this is happening now, where I think many of our democratic ideals are being eroded. I think we've been concerned about it. And another concern is that, somehow people are not aware of it. I know there's too large a number of people that are Holocaust deniers. And I think they talk to young people who have never heard of Auschwitz. They don't even know about the camps. So I don't know if it's just a matter of our education or if something like the Holocaust is just not, talked about or taught enough. But that's a concern. Again, not so that the focus will be so much on us or what happened to us, but so that the ideals that we have all been privileged to, enjoy will be, kept. Just be aware and be grateful and happy about our democracy, and learn more about what we have here and our benefits in America, so that we can hold on to it. And I think America is a wonderful place which has always welcomed refugees, even though it was not easy to continue that, and not to be discriminating against refugees or people that are different from what some might consider not the norm.